Good morning and welcome to this Upande, to our first of a series of Upande webinars. I'm seeing we have a few people joining in on time. Thank you guys for your punctuality. So, yeah, ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome you to this first series of Upande webinars that we will, So, yeah. We'll be having a series of these webinars. So this is the first, and today we will be discussing opportunities for the water and sanitation innovations and innovators in the fight against COVID-19. So it's 10 a.m. We still have a few minutes to allow some more people to join so we don't leave some people behind. So we'll just give you some time. Thank you guys. I see some more people joining. Thank you and welcome. So we have guys joining us from all over Africa. Thank you very much. We have people from Somalia, Uganda, so many Kenyan teams. You know, we have more from Netherlands. Thank you very much for joining. We're still waiting on a few people, but in the meantime, I will just maybe fill you in on the rules of engagement. We have the chat, but the chat feature, you can use that to make a comment or say something that you feel needs to be known. You can send that to the panelists and also all attendees to see. So you can use that in case you have a question. Kindly feel free to ask the questions, use the Q&A feature, and we will see your questions and address to them. Also, we will have a Q&A session dedicated solely to that. Thank you, Engineer Abdi Shakur from Somalia. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for your message. Thank you, Silao. Yeah, basically that's how the chat works. And have the Q&A. You can use that. We will have a time allocated to address that. And also, during that Q&A, well, since we have so many professionals and innovators, fellow professionals in this field, in different fields in the wash sector. So we'll have some people who are more knowledgeable and have more information on a question that has been raised than we might have. So we will give you an opportunity to answer a question if you feel you're in a better position. And you can do that just by raising your hand, and we'll give you a chance to talk. Again, that will be during the Q&A session. Yeah. I hope everyone of you has interacted with Zoom before. So yeah, sorry, Muscle says you have 2 questions. Please ask. Thank you very much for that trial. Again, we still have 2 more minutes. People are still joining us. So I'll take that, we'll just give them those 2 minutes to have them join. Thank you. And thank you for your patience. Okay, great. It's time to start. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome all of you to our first of a series of webinars that we will be hosting as Upande, different topics every time. And today we will be discussing about opportunities in the wash and sanitation for entrepreneurs and innovators in the fight against COVID-19. We have, well, it's quite an interesting topic today for starters, because now we're experiencing this all together, and we want to, as fellow professionals and fellow innovators in this field, we want to make the most out of it and learn from it. So today we have an amazing panel lined up. I will have Mark, our CEO, introduce and tell you more about Upande and what we do, and also the theme for today, and the theme, and also introduce our guest speakers and tell you more about them. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Mark. Mark, thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome very much to this first webinar. We're very excited to be doing this. It's a new experience for us, but we're very keen to do this, and looking forward to your feedback and seeing how we can do hopefully many more of these with yourselves and with others as we share practices and work together. So as Selby mentioned, my name is Mark de Blois. I'm the CEO and founder of Upanda Limited, which is a Kenya-based firm which has been operational for 10 years, working on innovative solutions in the water space. We are very passionate about data-driven decisions, about local transformative solution development, and we build applications in Africa and for Africa, and actually are able to export technology from here as well to other parts of the continent and beyond. And we're very excited to be hosting this session with you today. So welcome once again. So as part of the program, we are lucky enough to be able to work with some other panelists. So I'm going to share my screen right now. We have basically with us today two key speakers who will be talking about the theme of today. The theme of today is innovative solutions around WASH, entrepreneurs, and bringing together stakeholders, both from the utility space as well as from the financing, as well as from the private sector. So we first of all would like to welcome Mr. Thomas Odongo. Mr. Thomas Odongo is the Managing Director of Kisumu Water and Sanitation Company, sewerage company, I should say, who is a creative strategist, a results-driven sales executive, who's been at the helm of Kisumu Water for the last few years and been able to make great changes there, and is seen as one of the utilities that is setting the tone and the standard also in Kenya right now when it comes to operations. So we'd like to give him the perspectives also, particularly around the COVID challenges and the gaps that are there from his point of view. He'll be the first speaker who will be sharing the needs from the utility side. He's also been embracing new technology, and we've been lucky enough to also work with him on developing some of those solutions, including monitoring of level sensors and things like that. After Mr. Odongo has given his perspective on the gaps, we'd like to go over to Marlies Battering. Marlies is a seasoned financier, I would say, from Aqua for All, from the Netherlands. She's a member of the management team there, and part of the SCALE program, a new program that she'll be talking about undoubtedly, which has secured a lot of funding for innovations that have business perspectives. So we look forward to hearing her view on that, and particularly also the COVID angle. Aqua for All has been funding many initiatives in Africa and other parts of the world, including through their Via Water program, of which Upanda ourselves have been a beneficiary also, and has allowed us to develop some of the tools that we actually are offering services around. So welcome very much to both of our speakers. We're very excited, and without further ado, I'd like to give the word back to Selby and allow basically Mr. Odongo to kick off with his presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mark, for that amazing introduction. So let me just pass it on to Mr. Thomas, so we don't waste any time.
Thank you very much, and thanks, Mark, for that very, very good introduction. As Mark has said, my name is Thomas Odongo. I'm the MD at Kisumu Water and Sanitation Company. I'm going to talk about the gaps in water and sanitation service provision in Kenya with respect to COVID-19 pandemic. This disease is affecting people, it's affecting our way of life, and it's also affecting businesses globally, and Kenya is no exception. The water sector is heavily affected by this disease. As a utility, and this is not unique to Kisumu, we've seen a major drop in revenues by about 50%. Most of our commercial customers who account for 80% of our revenues have either closed down or scale down their operations. So this has seen us drop our revenues. The other challenge that we have is that whatever little that we have built, collecting becomes a problem. So collection efficiency for most utilities in Kenya has dropped to about 30%. And this is not helped by pronouncement by politicians and government agencies that are advising utilities not to disconnect customers at this time. So that's a very big challenge, because the bills will pile up, and once we start collecting these bills, there is going to be a challenge for customers to pay the bills. So all this is happening, and yet we are expected to maintain current operations, because water is key in fighting the spread of COVID-19. In Kisumu City, 60% of the populace live in the low-income areas. And you know the challenges in the low-income areas. Household connections is not very easy. So we are forced to have shared water points, the kiosk and communal water points, which in itself is a transmission risk because of the too much handling and keeping social distance when trying to fetch water from the shared water points is a big problem. As a utility, we decided, and working with the county government and other partners, to put hand washing points in various areas, especially in the low-income areas. But you realize that access to water in the low-income areas is also another challenge. So hand washing and personal hygiene is a great challenge at this particular time. This pandemic has come at a time when we have a lot of rains. We have challenges that when it rains, then the stormwater gets into the sewer system, and that poses a sanitation challenge. In the low-income areas, most people use pit latrines during the rainy season, and you know these are lakeside city. The water table is very high, so these pit latrines get filled up and floods, and it ends up into the river, thereby polluting the river and finally the lake. So these are challenges that utilities face. These are the gaps that are there when it comes to water service provision at this time when we have this pandemic. I like referring to it as a disruptive dynamic that has come at the wrong time, and utilities are forced to maintain current operations more efficiently and at a lower cost. What you are forced to do is to do more with less, because the revenues are not coming in. And we expect support from the national government. We expect support from the county government as well. So how are we being able to manage to maintain our operations at this time? One is that we looked at our CapEx, realigned our CapEx, realigned our OpEx as well. That is the capital expenditure and the operating expenditure. The other thing is that we are leveraging on technology so that we maintain operations. You know, currently we have a challenge because our meter readers cannot perform optimally because there are customers who are resisting. They don't want meter readers to get into their premises. Our plumbers are the same. They have challenges when trying to interact with customers. So it is technology that can help utilities continue to maintain current operations. So when we talk of technology, we are looking at things like prepaid meters. We have prepaid meters in the low-income areas, though not all the low-income areas are covered with the prepaid meters. So that has helped us in collecting revenue in advance. We've also invested in technology like we are monitoring our tank levels remotely. So that is also helping us. We are reducing the kind of staff that we have in the field. So we use the prepaid meters as an innovation in poor connection. We are also using that as an innovation in increasing revenue. Yeah, for a utility to continue operating optimally, then we need investments to digitize the workplace. So what we are advising or telling the investors is that kindly invest in technology for utilities so that we are able to continue operating more efficiently or doing more with less. So there are various technologies that as a utility we are looking at. We are looking at upscaling the smart metering so that we don't have meter readers going to the field. We just drive by and we collect meter readings. So that will ensure that operations are in place. We are also looking at monitoring our networks remotely, looking at a full SCADA system, for example. We need investment. We need investment in that. Yeah, thank you, Mark. I think that is what I have to. That is my contribution for today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thomas Odongo, for giving us the perspective of the utility sectors. Thank you very much. I want to maybe just recap on what you said, that major challenges, accessibility to water in the low-income areas is a big challenge. So as a utility company, you're having trouble, getting water to the people. And now that during this time of COVID, we are not able to work as efficiently as we would, now we're forced to look into technology and automation so we can have systems still running up. And that's what we are here to do today. We are here to look at these opportunities for automation and the technologies that we have, and maybe even find out how to get these investors that the utility companies really need. So also I want to remind you, everyone, kindly use the hashtag Wash Innovations for COVID for all social media interactions. Thank you very much again for joining us. I will pass it on to Marlies Butterlink from Aqua for All, and she will tell us about the financing in WASH, basically. She'll tell us more. Let me have her take it away. Thank you very much, Marlies.
Thank you very much for, can you see my screen now?
Yes, we can, thank you.
That's great. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for participating in this webinar. I'm happy to see many familiar names and also some unfamiliar names. So my name is Marlies Batterink. I'm with Aqua for All. Thanks, Mr. Odongo, for sharing your insights on what's happening on the side of the water service provider in Kisumu in this case. Thanks, Mark, for organizing this opportunity. I have some slides prepared from the perspective of Aqua for All. Aqua for All is a not-for-profit organization based in the Netherlands, and usually I'm out in Kenya quite a lot, but at this point I'm not even in the office, I'm stuck at home. And I think it's good to share a little bit about Aqua for All, but also from our side as a financier of the sector, as a grantor, how we look at the challenges on COVID-19. So let's see if it's moving. Advance. Yes. Yeah. So some brief summary on why Aqua for All is in existence, we do see the service gap in, you know, in the normal world. We are all aware that we are already behind in service delivery in WASH, and that it costs money. And that is nothing new, of course. That is the reality already without COVID-19. And Aqua for All is an organization targeting closing that service gap with the finance that we receive from the Dutch government. And not only closing the service gap, but also the finance gap. Because what we know is that closing the service gap requires quite some investment. And the problem is that the finance currently available through either public funds, through governments, or donor funds is very small related to the challenge. So what Aqua for All's program is focusing on is trying to mobilize other kinds of finance to close the service and the finance gap. And some of you are quite familiar already with how we operate, but as I said, we try to bridge the service and the finance gap in WASH, and we target the innovation side of the sector, but also trying to support solutions that can scale and ultimately attract commercial investments, because that is where the larger pile of money is. So what we do in practice, and I think that is already shared by Mark in his introduction, we do support innovations in the sector through our Via Water program. And in the names of the participants, I do see some familiar names that have received some support from Aqua for All in the past. We try to identify innovations that the sector needs, and that is why we try to interact with key players in the sector like the utilities to understand what are their needs, what is available on the market, and how can we make it work in practice. And then we also try to scale solutions that have proven that they work. But how do we do that? And that is not only on the responsibility of the entrepreneur, but an enabling environment and close collaboration with the government is a key element there. And it's not only about attracting commercial finance into the sector, but also how can we combine that with mobilizing public finance. I think it's very important to keep realizing it's a joint effort. So what we do is, oh, sorry, that was too quick. Very briefly in practice, day-to-day work for us is identifying innovative solutions, trying to prove their concepts in practice, then trying to scale their those solutions by closing partnerships, and that is the higher end of this picture, with financiers, with impact investors, with well, innovative concepts that can create more value into the market. So that is a stepped approach in which we do see a key role for innovation, because to accelerate services and to get them better services to the people that need them, we need innovations. And it's not only about innovation, so that's why we also work on scaling existing proven concepts. I have a very difficult picture here that I want to skip. So yes, I wanted, because Mark asked me to talk a little bit more about finance, I want to share with you briefly how we try to get more finance into the sector. So that is the partnership with financiers. We do see their interest in viable cases, but usually the interest goes to agricultural entrepreneurs or solar businesses in emerging markets. But WASH is a tricky business, apparently. So what Aqua for All tries to do is to closely collaborate with private funds, with local financiers, local banks, to see what they need to invest into the wash space. So can we, well, we call that de-risk them. So what proof do they need before they step into specific businesses? And that's where we try to also put a little bit of our finance and trigger them coming closer to the water sector. Now, this is the normal day-to-day business that Aqua for All is doing, not only in Kenya, but also in other countries like Ethiopia, Bangladesh, and West Africa. And then a couple of weeks ago, also our life changed a little bit because of COVID-19, not only in practice, but also the way we work and what kind of work we are doing. Because we are all working from home, businesses are under pressure. I think Mr. Odongo also shared what's happening, not only to a water utility, but it's a trickle-down effect. If businesses are not operational anymore, they don't use water, or they still use water but cannot pay for the bills anymore. So you see a whole trickling down effect of the COVID-19. With limited movement options, you also get logistical challenges in getting supplies. So by now we do have a pretty good picture on the impact of COVID on the wash space, I think. But I'm happy to learn more from the participants as well. So there are also some interesting side effects, I think. Because who would have thought that washing your hands would have been the biggest news item for 2020 so far? We've all together put quite a lot of effort in sensitization campaigns on hygiene, on sanitation, on water, and all of a sudden it's a headline in the newspapers, which is interesting. But at the same time, I think it shows very much the critical role that wash service providers actually play, and the weaknesses in our current system, and what that means in battling this pandemic. And more we realize we are not only battling COVID-19, but after COVID-19 there are perhaps other pandemics coming. So the relevance of good wash systems is more, I think, more realized more than ever. And at this point, we have some serious challenges in not only in Kenya, but in many other countries where health clinics, for instance, where people are going, don't even have wash facilities in many cases, which is a very serious problem. So we've been doing some research as Aqua for All on the challenges in the wash sector, not only in Kenya, but in the different countries that we work. And we don't see only challenges, but we also see opportunities. And I think that is where we should focus also. Some challenges, and I think already mentioned by Mr. Odongo, is that there is a high increase in the demand for water. And it says here in my presentation, maybe unpaid water, which is in some cases also a political message, which has its challenges to people who are trying to make a viable business out of wash services. This results in revenues that drop heavily. Not only, I think Mr. Odongo mentioned 50%, but we've heard stories of revenues dropping up to 70%. Which is, of course, unimaginable some weeks ago. So there's no cash reserves for emergencies. At the same time, service providers are requested to expand their services and put hand washing stations and put materials out there to prevent any contamination. So this means that we understand that actually grant subsidies are very urgent. Working capital is very urgent. What we also see when we talk to financiers in the sector, that they are shying away a little bit of doing what they did, providing investments into the sector. Because of the dropping revenues, who wants to invest? So those are some of the challenges that we've collected, and we realized that. At the same time, well, the demand for wash services and for smart solutions is higher than ever. So no more marketing needed, I would say. Already mentioned by Mr. Odongo, I think innovative solutions can actually assist in this crisis, where we try to prevent physical interaction as much as possible. So remote solutions, quick solutions, accurate solutions are very much required to fill in the gaps that we realize right now and for the future. And I think there is also availability of finance. I think not only governments, but also other sector players are trying to organize themselves to respond and to invest in the future of the sector. So there are some opportunities there. And that is actually the area where Aqua for All tries to focus its efforts. So I try to summarize, what do we actually need right now? I think it's important for us as sector players to try and coordinate our efforts and to integrate our efforts, not only from the wash space, but because this is a global challenge, we need to integrate our efforts from the different sectors all together and try to move out of our silos. Why I really welcome this webinar and many other initiatives is that we need more attention to the relevance of wash and also the opportunities that wash SMEs, wash service providers have to battle this challenge. So more media attention is required. We do realize that safeguarding the service delivery of public and private water providers is crucial. Right now, if few of those businesses will not survive, we are behind maybe 5-10 years in time. We've built up so carefully, trying to build up the sector, trying to build up an entrepreneurial atmosphere in which investments can flow. If they don't survive right now, we have to start all over. So safeguarding the functionality and service delivery of those providers is crucial. And of course, political support and investment is key. And I'm very happy that there has been a call for action from global leaders, which has been underlined by many leaders. But now we also need action, I would say, which leads to increased public and private investment. It cannot only be grants, it cannot only be public finance, but it cannot only be commercial investments at this point. So we need to blend. And I think that is where we try to play a role and see what solutions are needed in what phase in time. And then I have a few final slides. Yes, I think later this week, Aqua for All will launch a COVID-19 response facility. Because we do realize that with the best intentions of our original program on the strategic future of what we try to achieve, the realities are different now. We need to respond now, and we need to respond quickly to maintain and support those businesses and initiatives that are struggling right now. So on the basis of a quick research on our site, we realized that there is a funding requirement from small medium enterprises in WASH in Kenya and other countries. And in this picture, you see that a small portion would require grants, quick, mainly working capital, But also there is a lot of investment requirements, which is loan requirements, usually for assets. And that is an interesting result of our quick scan. And in our response facility, we try to address both needs. So how can we support quickly through grants combined with loans? And how do we move financial institutions still into the wash space, although we are looking at the current challenges with COVID-19? And that's where we try to come in. So we try to blend and we try to respond quickly. And we are going to try and launch it this week, which is an initiative of Aqua for All, but endorsed by many players. And if you know of other financiers that would like to join forces here with us on this response facility, we are happy to be in touch. And we need more endorsers because that increases our reach. And also, I think together we can make it work better. So this is a preview, a sneak preview of our response facility, which is under construction. And my final slide is how I look at the near future for the wash space. What I do see is that wash will remain a key solution, not only against COVID-19, but it's important that we realize it's a key solution to any hygiene health related challenges. And that is on the forefront now, and let's keep it there. And you do see quite some emergency response right now, but that will fade away. And our concern at this point from Aqua for All perspective is there are free handouts currently, but that will not remain. And ultimately, free gifts don't exist. Somebody pays, and it's our biggest goal to keep the entrepreneurial spirit in the sector, to accelerate those innovations that we need to strengthen the sector and to scale the solutions that are already there. And I understand we need crisis response, but we need to go back to a recovery model to strengthen systems that enable more finance to flow into the sector. And we are happy to support any initiative that fits this, this ambition and join us on this journey. So I do hope that it does give some opportunities and some hope for people in those challenging times. And I'm happy to discuss more in detail, but this is the last slide. And I'll give it back to the moderator and try to stop sharing my screen.
Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much, Mrs. Butterlink. Sorry. So just to recap on what you've said regarding financing in the wash sector, for those maybe who joined us in the middle of your presentation, basically what financials do, wash financials do, they basically support innovations, they scale up those viable innovations, and they catalyze to give up an enabling environment and close collaboration to facilitate the success of this innovation. And they mobilize the finance. So I think that's very important for people to know. Most of the time you don't know how the process starts and ends. What would they give you? What do they offer you when you have an innovation and you don't know what to do? So I think that was a good information. And the opportunities that we have for the current opportunities in the COVID pandemic. With the COVID pandemic, we have this unprecedented demand for the wash departments. People really need that quick expansion right now, especially with the hygiene and sanitation standards that we need to manage this pandemic. So there's an increased attention to this wash sector. And we need innovative and remotely managed solutions which are cost effective and they work faster, preferably in real time, and are more accurate than having the work manually, having us manually doing the work. So without further ado, I would like to remind you to use the hashtag WASH Innovations for COVID, excuse me, in all the social media interactions. And now I will invite Mark to tell us more about the IoT technology side and more also about what Upande does to contribute to this sector. Thank you very much. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you very much for that, Selby, and yeah, also to the previous speakers, Mr. Dongo and Marlies. I think we've gotten good insights into the actual needs, and also what are some of the instruments and how they're being implemented. Indeed, it's great to hear that there's a room for technology as well, for remote monitoring and yeah, tools like that. So I would like to just talk you through a few slides of some of the things that we've been working on the last couple of years, as well as right now with a focus on COVID. So of course, in that sense, our work, what I'm covering is influenced, of course, by what we are working on ourselves. At the same time, I've also tried to see what are other people doing in this space and also touch on that, so that it's not just about us. But I've basically titled the slides Technology Support for WASH Entrepreneurs and Innovators, bearing in mind that, of course, we can't speak for everybody. And there'll be a lot of things actually happening out there that we'd love to also feature in a platform like this. And hopefully in follow-up sessions, we might be able to do more of that. So briefly, what are some of the challenges that are there in the water sector? I'm not going to read them all out, because they've also been actually, brought firsthand from Mr. Ondongo from the field himself. Of course, utilities struggling to get money, not allowing to disconnect people, having to reconnect people that are not paying. That's a big challenge and an expense for the utility if also the prospects of getting payments are tricky. So probably we can have also Mr. Dongo speak to that topic in the Q&A part a little bit later. I don't necessarily think that we have a solution for that right now, so I'll leave that one for now. There's also, of course, things like the cost of power and chemicals, which is a huge burden. And I've drawn some of these challenges also from the report and analysis that was done by WASPA, the Water Service Providers Association of Kenya, on what are some of the pandemic-related initiatives and impacts in the water service sector for Kenya, that is. Of course, there's also an increased need to store more water in different locations, hand washing stations that need to come up, that need to be serviced by the utilities. Water has to be moved around for that as well. These are now challenges that perhaps have not been mentioned, but are abound. Also, the need of the utilities themselves to work more online. I think that's been touched on by Mr. Odongo in terms of the efficiency. Need to have more online communication, remote work. And then I think also awareness creation is also an opportunity, that follows from a big challenge out there in terms of awareness of COVID and things like that. So some of the opportunities I think have been alluded to and have been implemented by Kiwasco in Kisumu and many other utilities. On the prepaid side, so taking the cash flow and getting it upfront. Water ATMs, token-based consumption allows utilities to get the cash upfront and to, through public standpipes, disseminate the water at an affordable rate. And this is something that players, of course, like Majimilele are working on locally. But of course, there's also opportunities for domestic prepaid meters, such as you can see in the example here, where also for housing estates, individual meters can also be remotely closed if payment is not there. If need be, when there's no payment, they can still be used in a way that some smaller amount of water is still being passed through in order just to make sure that people will stay alive. So technology can actually help that. And these are kind of technologies that, that I think have been referred to already that are in great demand right now. And of course, the financing part of that can be tricky because of the high capex that some of these interventions can bring. But I think that's why we have Aqua for All here and other financiers that have been mentioned who are able to help get some of these interventions moving, given the fact that with their use, payment back to the financier can be arranged automatically. The other opportunity out there is on the storage automation part. So having seamless water supply to schools, public places, and areas of high traffic through tanks that can be fitted with sensors, such as the picture you see from Kisumu. That is on the large tanks for the utilities, but also small tanks, hand washing stations can be fitted with similar sensors that are coming down in price. And we are actually pioneering some of that work in Kenya and building some of those electronics ourselves. There are, of course, quite a few initiatives that are happening also when it comes to automated water and soap dispensers, whether it's through optical recognition or some of the ones that are more mechanical, but there's a lot of innovations happening out there that will become very important going forward. When these are tied now to sensors, they can potentially become part of a smart network, so to say, where now they can trigger basically action from utilities, from trucks, to actually keep systems up and running. So technologically, this is possible, and it's something that we are part of and keen to partner with others on. Of course, on the software side, efficiency has been mentioned as it's very important right now. Of course, a lot of utilities are already accepting payments through mobile and have largely gone cashless already. If not now, it's really the time to, of course, carry that out, including prepaid options, of course, have been discussed. I think one of the opportunities that we also see is self-meter reading for the conventional meters that are still out there. As utilities struggle to find their way onto some of the compounds, there's an opportunity also for citizens and for customers to become part of actually the solution and helping share some data. There's an opportunity also when it comes to operational software and in the form of ERPs. ERP is an enterprise resource planning tool that can be used to streamline operations, work as a team, track issues, do HR, payroll, and job card, technical tasks that need to be done that can be synchronized by a mobile phone. So this ERP is something that we're actually deploying ourselves as a Upande, and we're happy to answer any questions on that afterwards. And I think one of the important things is it's important for a utility to find users where they are at, right? So whether they're using SMS, perhaps WhatsApp, and through bots and through groups, it is increasingly possible to become more engaged with the customers out there, and can therefore also replace the physical meetings in the offices, which are becoming more difficult. Besides the smart meters that I talked about, there's also the opportunity to work on the mapping side. So once a utility also knows where their customers are, where the zones are, by having a GIS system in place, it is of course much better to also remotely plan interventions, operations, and embracing GIS in that sense is very key. Besides having sensors for smart meters, bulk meters, domestic meters, it's also possible to monitor other parameters such as water quality, not just water quantity, but also quality, such as chlorine, pH, conductivity. And these are physical sensors that can actually be deployed, that can give this live actionable data from across great distances. This is something that we're actually, as Upanda, also doing. Terrorism in refugee camps, IDP camps, and can give, utilities and the customers data to act upon right away and to get automatic alerts when something is not quite right. There's also a big opportunity for awareness material dissemination, as there are still so many people that are struggling with the basics, understanding what social distancing, hand washing, and there's opportunities through some of the local Wi-Fi distributors to have content, perhaps branded content, go out to actually create awareness. So these are opportunities that we see are out there, but perhaps not being fully engaged. So these are just some of the ideas from our point of view that we've seen. Some of them we're working on, some we're not, but we're keen to partner also with others who might have solutions in these areas or others, as we also partner and ensure that customers never run out of water. We optimize logistics, promote good hand washing practices. So, because in the end, if we all contribute and play our part in the value chain, we are able to all benefit as communities and as a world at large. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mark, for that very interactive conversation on innovative tech solutions and challenges that we experience, especially at this time. So just to recap, the challenges are across board, especially for the utilities and maybe even water providers, even those who just sell water. We all experience such problems, these challenges of customers are not paying. And at this point in time, we're not allowed to disconnect these users. And at some point, you're even forced to give out free water. And sometimes you have to store water, but you don't even know when you're running out of water. So, and on that, we have a couple of opportunities that we can work on to make that better. There are some prepaid solutions in terms of water meters. There are storage automation solutions in terms of level sensors for different tanks and storages. We have operational software solutions, especially for now that we have to work from home, when you have to monitor your systems and your assets, your employees, basically the human resource. How do you manage that? We have operational softwares for that. And last but not least, we have low-cost hardware and some open source technology, which helps us basically make this whole process as smart as it can be. Okay, so I think now we can maybe get into the Q&A. I will give you guys 2 minutes to just shoot your questions. We already have some questions coming in. So I will have Mark take over the Q&A and maybe successfully direct the conversation and
All right.
Answer your questions. So thank you, Mark. I believe you can see the questions coming in.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Selby. And do keep sharing your questions.
Okay.
Some of them have been answered partly by the panelists already directly, but are worth also, I think, sharing a bit more widely. So one of the questions that came in was, how do you deal with clients that don't pay the bills? Can and should we disconnect them? Or is there a government guideline of not disconnecting? And if so, how do you deal with that financially? So I think it's a very valid question. I would like to give the floor to Mr. Odongo to also share his perspective for the Kenyan case, but also maybe even for beyond Kenya, perhaps some ideas on how to tackle that very important question. So, Mr. Odongo, would you be able to give us your live perspective on that? If you could, then please unmute yourself and I'll give you the floor.
Yes, Mark. Thank you, and I thank Marcel for that question. Of course, we've been advised not to disconnect, and we are trying as much as possible to abide by that advisory. What we are doing currently with our customers is that we are engaging them and having discussions one-on-one. This is a time where a utility must know their customers. So we normally send them SMSs and advise them that on the importance of paying their bills at this particular time so that they do not have supply interruption. What we tell them is that it costs money to treat the water and bring it to your doorstep. So if you don't pay, then this water may not reach your doorstep and you will be at a disadvantage. We are also using social media a lot. We're also using social media a lot in terms of trying to engage our customers. So we are abiding with the directive not to disconnect, but we are going an extra mile by engaging our customers directly. Thank you, Mark.
All right, excellent. Thank you very much for that perspective. One of the other questions that I see coming in is, are there any thoughts on automated job assignment tracking systems within the WSP teams? Perhaps, Mr. Odongo, could you also indicate, do you have any solution for that, for physical jobs and tracking them and automating them from the field that you use as a WSP?
Yes, it's something that we don't have currently, but in the next financial year, we are looking at automating our balance scorecard. So we'll be able to track performance and job assignments on real time. But currently, what we have is a CRM where job assignments are assigned to the respective people through a work ticket. They get a ticket on their SMS and explanation of the assignment. For example, if it's a leakage, you are told that there's a leakage in X area. Can you go and attend to it? So once the plumber receives that ticket, he attends to the leakage and then closes the ticket. Once the ticket is closed, then the person who reported the leakage receives a message as well that the leakage has been repaired. So that is automated currently, but you want to go a step further and automate the whole performance appraisal and balance scorecard system that we use. Yeah, so it's technology that is available, and we are currently using it in a limited way through our CRM, the Customer Relationship Management. Thank you, Mark.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Odongo. And maybe also just to mention that the ERP system that I also presented on, that we're deploying right now, also has a job card integration, so that it all brings that information in one interface. So that's also something that we have as a company of Mwende. So I'm seeing other questions. So let me go to the next one. So one question is from Nicola Green. Problem seems so well defined with potential solutions identified, even if not yet developed, in water. When it comes to both people with sewer connections or those with on-site sanitation, have such areas of potential activity been identified? So an open question, perhaps, I don't know if Marlies or Mr. Dongo would like to respond to that. I'd like to give you the floor.
Hi, Mark, I didn't get the question. Probably you can repeat.
So the question was that in water, a lot of the problems have been identified, including some solutions that are on their way. But when it comes to now people with sewer connections or those with on-site sanitation, have areas of potential activity to fill gaps there also been identified as well as on the water side?
Yes. The opportunities in sewer and sanitation have also been identified, and efforts are being made to address that. For example, in sewer connection, we are looking at, in sewer and sanitation, we are looking at the whole value chain, and there are interventions and actually new innovations in how we are having that. In areas where we don't have sewer network, people are using mostly pit latrines and or septic tanks. We are engaging pit emptiers, training them so that this can be handled in a more hygienic way, and then also transported. We've given them access to our treatment plant. So once it's the pit is emptied, this is brought to our treatment plants where we treat the waste and release back the water to the environment. And then we are also looking at byproducts from the sludge that comes out of the treatment process. So I'd say that, yes, I know quite a lot of advancements have been made in water, but there's also a lot of focus currently in sewerage and sanitation. We are also looking at technology that can turn the sludge into organic manure within a very short time. And we've been discussing with some investors and like Eco Holdings, who have a solution for that. So there are several solutions that are there. We also have organizations like Synergy and Sanitation, where we also provided quite some innovative solutions in the whole sanitation value chain, service chain. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. And we actually have people from Sanitation also on the call here. So I think we should be able to make that connection very well. I just also point out that in the chat, there's also some questions coming in. Not everybody has shared the question in the Q&A, which is perfectly fine. So one of the questions that comes in is, thanks Marlies, the project of COVID-19 response facility you're launching soon sounds great. Will it concern in the Horn of Africa, especially Somalia? Is that something that you might be able to speak to?
Yes, thank you. Just briefly to come back to the previous question on sanitation, we see that the challenges in entrepreneurial activities are similar to any wash or sanitation related company. And indeed, I do think that companies like Sanitation, which are on the call, do see also similar challenges for drops maybe in their revenues or the way that they need to do increased investments to stay safe during current operations. So I think that is a bit similar what we see. Coming back to your question on our COVID response facility, initially we will focus on our target countries of our programs, which does not include Somalia at this point, but our ambition is to grow the facility as fast as possible for other financiers to join on board, and then that will enable us to expand to other areas. So hopefully we can also address other countries beyond those original countries that Aqua for All focuses on, which is Kenya, Ethiopia, West Africa, around Mali mainly, and then Bangladesh at this point.
Thank you very much, Marlies. One of the questions that has come in from somebody who's actually just mentioned that they had to leave. We will be able to give the answer back. to that person through email. But the question is the price set for WSPs to supply water able to cover their variable costs of extracting, treatment, and pumping water? So that would be a question for Mr. Odongo.
Thank you, Mark. Yes, the tariff that we use is a cost recovery tariff. So we are able to recover our costs because it's normally determined by a detailed socio-economic study and investment plan. So that is used to determine the tariff, and the tariff is actually set by the regulator. So yes, the tariff is cost recovery, and WSPs are able to recover their costs.
Excellent, thank you very much. I have another question. I'm an entrepreneur starting a water company. My market research shows that a lot of water is lost during supply and money is lost this way. Mark and the Upanda team, do you have any solution that can help me make sure I don't lose water and money? Good question. Certainly, there are solutions for this. First of all, how much water is being produced can be monitored with a bulk meter. So a meter that is a big kind that allows you to just track your entire production. And then by splitting up the network and having also zonal meters, basically that are not there for a specific customer, but for parts of your network, allows you to break down the network and therefore basically do the mathematics to see where basically in the end, when the water is sold to the customer, and we sum up all of those customers' usage during a specific period, and we take the reading on the same day. And that's where, of course, the smart meters come in, because then you can do it even live. That means you can actually live get an understanding of which zone are things not tallying. So this is a solution that exists that we also have and other people out there. So definitely there's no need to be in the loss if you're starting something new, and if your CapEx allows you to invest also in some of this smart technology. So thanks for that. We do also have a question from that talks about rural, which I think would be interesting to bring in. Water demand in the rural areas has increased significantly, considering that people spend most of their time at home, schools have closed and children are at home, and people are more aware of the COVID preventative measures like washing hands frequently. This means long queues at water kiosks, operational hours are insufficient, there's needs for more water, increasing the number of taps, including installing more automated water dispensers, to have longer opening hours. That's an observation that somebody has made. Well, I think that's a good observation, and I think it also shows where there is an opportunity for players like water ATMs and things like that to step into, because they can, of course, work, in any hour, so to say, and not dependent on somebody to man them. So that's a great feedback. Let me see what other questions have come in. So we still have a few other questions that have not been answered. How do we handle the legitimate mistrust and fear of governments in provision of wash services in low-income areas? Maybe, Mr. Dongo, you could speak to that. How do we handle mistrust?
Okay, I believe the questioner is talking about illegal water connections. I think that makes extending service provision to the low-income areas to be a problem. But this has since been overcome. One, in terms of pricing. If you put water kiosks and you price it appropriately, then you're going to kill the illegal water connections. In Kisumu, we are working with the community. We have master operators who will give water in bulk, and in turn they reticulate that to the rest of the community in their service area, and that has really worked for us. So I don't think there's any mistrust. In fact, there's a lot of focus in trying to increase connectivity in the low-income areas, and there's been a lot of success in that through government intervention, through the regulator, And through the intervention of private financiers and investors, and Aqua for All has also been very supportive in terms of increasing connectivity in the low-income areas. I think there's government support to ensure that water supply in the low-income areas is enhanced. So in terms of operating hours, then prepaid meters have been a very good solution, because prepaid meters are open 24 hours. So the prepaid meters could be a water ATM or just the normal prepaid meters that are supplied by Majimilele and other service providers. Thank you.
All right, thanks for that. And I think that also ties in nicely with a question that has come from George, who says, from a procurement perspective, what are the biggest barriers to investing in innovative technologies, such as prepaid smart meters, for instance, for utilities in Kenya, and how can they be overcome? Marcel, are you on the call, and could you speak to that in 2 sentences? And then I'm going to require some assistance in allowing Marcel to speak. Marcel? Marcel is from Majimilele. So yes, go ahead, Marcel.
I think Marcel is muted. Oh.
No, maybe not. Sorry, I was just stepped out for just 1 minute.
So Marcel, the question that came was, yes, from a procurement perspective, what is the biggest barrier to investing in innovative technologies, such as the water kiosks that you deploy?
From a procurement perspective,
yes.
The biggest problem from the procurement perspective. Well, from a procurement perspective, I don't know so much, but let's say anybody who wants to procure, I've done that several times. I can help them with documents from other tenders. So sometimes, of course, making the technical specs for procurement is quite difficult, but I sometimes share tenders that were issued by several other providers to help the procurement departments to make it technically complete. And yeah, then there is the regular, let's say, processes. Yeah, I don't know if that is a real answer, but if it is on water ATMs and prepaid meters, and procurement departments find it technically difficult to write the tender, then I have a lot of information that I can share, and then it's partly copy paste, and then of course review everything if that fits the local water service provider.
All right, thank you very much for that, Marcel. We have another comment, who's a volunteer from Engineers Without Borders in the Netherlands, who's interested in a partnership with Aqua for All. So Marlies, just so that you know, in case you hadn't seen it in the chat, I think you can have that conversation offline. So it's good to also see how some partnerships can come out potentially from this.
Thanks for this, Mark.
Okay, so I think I see one more question, and I think also in the interest of time, we're having to start to wrap up. One other question that has come in: does the ERP allow integration with other applications apart from the job card? What are some of the applications that can be integrated with ERP? Thanks for that. So ERP basically stands for Enterprise Resource Planning, and basically it is very broad. So it has CRM in there, so your customers, it has billing, it has project tracking. It has HR, for example, asset management. So all of these features actually come together in ERP. And there are increasingly very cost-effective ERP solutions coming out there. And that's why we've launched Upanda ERP, which actually has all of those aspects covered. And that means that also those different content types that I mentioned can also be updated from the field through a mobile app as well. So it's indeed not just the job card, but even leave day tracking and asset tracking, things like that can also be done from the field, cached offline and synchronized when connectivity is there. So yes, there's a lot of things possible with some of these very cost-effective new solutions that are transforming how work can be done in the water space. So with that, I believe that we've answered most of the questions that I've seen coming in. And I'd like to give the floor back to Selby to wrap up our webinar for today.
Thank you very much, Mark. I believe everyone who asked the questions had got an answer, or at least got something. So I will just kindly remind all of you to use the hashtag, the WASH Innovations for COVID, in all our social media platforms. Remember to engage with us on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and also email or WhatsApp if you have our WhatsApp number. Always reach out to us in case you have any questions, if you need any clarifications, feedback, also kindly reach out to us. A few people have asked, but so we will send you guys today's recording, a recording of today's webinar. So kindly be patient, we will send that. And also at the end of this webinar, there was going to be a survey, a feedback survey. Kindly respond to that. That way we'll be having a couple of these webinars, a series of them. So we'd like to know what you guys want to talk about, what to engage in. If we didn't have, maybe there were more questions arising from this, maybe you didn't have your questions answered. So maybe we can have that figured out and organize your questions for next time. Again, I'd like to thank you all. I will thank you all for joining us. Thank you for taking the time, and thank you for your questions and your answers. I want to thank you very much, to thank the panelists, Ms. Buttering and Mr. Odongo, for being with us today, for taking their times off their busy schedules to educate us on matters utility and financing in the WASH sector. Also, thank you, Mark, for telling us about the opportunities and the innovations in tech. Thank you also, everyone, fellow professionals and innovators. Thank you for joining us today. We hope you will be joining us in the coming webinars. We'd love to have you with us. I think there's not much to say. Remember the hashtag, WASH Innovations for COVID. Keep up the conversation going. Let us know everything. Sorry, just a minute. Anthony, I can see your hand up. Would you like to say something? Let me just allow you to talk. Okay, Mr. Kamoto, kindly unmute yourself. So if you want to say something, if you're still there, I believe I saw your hand up. Okay, I don't know if he's still there. So if there's nothing else, I believe we can end this webinar here. Remember the hashtag, WASH Innovations for COVID. Thank you for taking the time again, and look forward to having you guys in the next webinar. yeah, remember to fill out the survey. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day and week.